Yeah, I really was um, pleased and happy with our performance on Saturday. Just so much fun to see the players and coaches have success. They worked extremely hard, and we asked them to work extremely hard the week leading up to our game against Duke following the Miami game. We made some progress in areas that were targeted, and work still remains to be done. We're right in the middle of the Coastal Division segment of our season with week after week with divisional opponents. And so the urgency and the preparation and the mindset really shifted pretty quickly from the Duke locker room celebration to the next opponent. And that's kind of just the way it works at this time of year. And so, yeah, with that, I'll take questions.
Your final two road games of the regular season come up in succession now. Anything you've learned to this point about this team playing on the road that affects how you prepare for these games?
Not necessarily, other than like most teams, you have to execute at a higher level and be more consistent and more mature to handle road environments. We've proved that we are capable of doing that with the season opener against Duke, and that formula for winning that game was very similar to our formula for beating Duke. There was a special teams play that impacted the game. There were turnovers that impacted the game. Field position was in our favor. And so in terms of your question, it might not be so much about where we're playing, it's just how we're playing and what that formula looks like. That formula worked very well for the first half against Notre Dame, but not the second half. So I think it's becoming clearer how we play well and what gives this team its best chance to win. Now, executing consistently regardless of circumstance, home or away, that is the next challenge. I also think that the changes that are happening in Scott Stadium with the way that we're supported and how vibrant the fan base is and how exciting it's becoming, there is a noticeable difference that our players really, they can't wait to play at home. And so I think that maybe in a unique way is also affecting the other, where the difference is becoming so stark of home or away that's maybe more noticeable than what it's been. That's a guess.
We talked after the game about some of the things that you worked on and then improved. And I wanted to go a little more into the offensive line. What did you see that was better? Was it as simple as execution? Were things changed scheme-wise, personnel-wise? What worked?
Well, I think that there certainly is an amazing amount of work that's going into the technical emphasis. But there's also a lot of work going into the schematic emphasis. Again, delivering the ball on time is critical. Having some semblance of balance in the run game is certainly critical. And then being able to have our quarterback carry the ball more frequently also helps. So all of those things against what is a good opponent and remains a good opponent, to me, just simply manifest that, or I believe it manifests that there was progress made in each of those three areas: technical, schematical, if that's a word, and balance.
And then defensively, obviously a very strong defensive game for you guys. Only one sack. Duke, a team that gets rid of the ball quick. Did you guys blitz as much, or did you have to dial that back because of the opponent and because of Bryce Hall not being in your secondary?
Actually, the amount of pressure, if anything, increased. Duke was throwing the ball quickly. We wanted to keep them throwing the ball quickly. With a couple new defenders out there, we didn't think double moves and play action and downfield shots were risks that would be positive for our team. And so if that did happen, we wanted the quarterback to be hit or have errant throws. And so by the increased amount of pressure, the ball was delivered frequently on time into coverage matchups that we liked. And it also forced the number of turnovers. So again, it went just the opposite. We actually brought more pressure rather than less.
Hasise did his best Odell Beckham impression the other day, even though the pass interference got in the way. But you needed a lot of receivers to step up this year. What allowed him to make that next step and improve as much as he has?
I think first we need to acknowledge that he has improved. The number of contested catches he's making it's becoming expected that he makes the contested catch. He's also making critical catches. It just seems like at the right time he's becoming so reliable. But Hasis's career didn't start like that, and it didn't emerge in year 2 like that. This has been a work in progress, and so just time and maturity with his increased focus on decision-making, work ethic, and consistency. That's allowed him to be durable, and he is tough. Consistent, which he wasn't, but has become, and productive, which is a result of those other two.
What were your original thoughts when you saw the schedule with the 3 consecutive home games early, 3 consecutive home games late, and then 4 out of 5 road games in the middle?
Yeah, kind of just the way you said it. Holy cow, there's 3, and then there's 3, and then there's 4, and then you just get to work. So for our given team and for this year's team, for us to win the Coastal Division, for us to take another step in advancing our program, for us to be a contender on the national scale, for us to remain building and having the unbroken growth that we're after, you have to play well regardless of where, when, and how you're scheduled. And so this is a great test for us to go back-to-back on the road now, and necessary for us to handle this this next obstacle.
Coach, we didn't see Brennan in the game. Armstrong wasn't in uniform. Just curious about his status at this point, as well as Ryan Swoboda, who was in a walking boot on Saturday.
Yep, Swoboda was in a walking boot and not available. Brennan Armstrong became available late in the week, and we did have an option to play him, but at the risk of possibly it not quite being ready yet, and so chose not to.
Callie hasn't had a ton of passes thrown his way, but I think he's caught every one, and he appears to have the ability to run after catch, maybe more than Butts did. What about his play this season and that of Mish, who's in there blocking a lot? Will Mish eventually be a pass catcher?
I think that the succession from Butts to Cowley, where Cowley was in Mish's role a year ago and no one really knew who he was, but Evan was catching and blocking and doing really nice things. Cowley's consistency has been so much fun to watch, and it just seems like when he makes the plays in catching the pass or receiving the pass, that it's at the right time, and then there's something happens after he catches it, which is really a positive thing for us. I wouldn't be surprised to see a slight increase in his usage as we continue to look for options and scoring down the stretch because he's proved that he's absolutely trustworthy and based on the same things you said. Yeah, so then Mish will then, he has to be the heir apparent. While we have targeted and have recruited and do have a commitment at the tight end position, we like the idea of understudies and learning and growing and then earning your way as you've learned from someone else how to do it. So the move of Grant Mish to tight end is, I feel really good about, and how he's handling that. He's also contributing on special teams at a high level, so there's no reason to think that he won't be the next Butts or Cowley.
I might have missed this one, Brad just asked, but Swoboda, is he available going forward?
I don't know yet. Don't know.
And Joey Blount, last time you were in here, I talked to you, I asked you about Joey Blount. You said makes big plays, needs to be more consistent. Have you seen since then an increase in his consistency? Is he trending in the right direction?
I think he is, and volume tends to influence that. I thought he played very well in our last game against Duke, and the number of plays he was involved in, it was a physical game for Joey, and he impacted the game. And we really need him to now with some of the other changes that have happened in the secondary, as he's one of the consistent pieces there. And so in answer to your question, yes, I have seen an improvement in consistency. that really has come through durability, and it's hard to perform more consistently or improve that part unless you're doing it more. And sometimes if you're not durable enough, or if your injuries are prohibiting that, by the time you kind of get back in the groove, then an injury happens and you're out again. So yes, he's more consistent because he's been more durable.
Got a call from a guy 15 miles from Charlottesville today saying, how would Joe Reed look at running back? Could you just talk about all the things he does and how much he improved over the years?
Yeah, Joe Reed's knowledge of the game and what the NFL personnel will call football IQ is just growing by leaps and bounds. He's in extra frequently during the week, continuing to learn the game. There are many of the player personnel people that come in from the NFL that think he is a running back. And so when you watch him as a kick returner, it's not hard to see why you would think that. When you look at yards after the catch or once he catches it, it's not hard to see that. And so we work hard and diligently, not perfectly, at having the right players on the field for the right play at the right time. And when Joe was one of the best players at about every position, you just try to choose where he can have the most impact on any given play. But certainly he could play that spot.
Sticking with Joe for a second, there's been some discussion about eliminating kickoffs because of the injuries and concussions. I'm curious, since you study so many things, is that something you've happened to look at, injuries on kick returns? And,
Sure.
And then do you have an opinion on whether that play should stay in the game?
Yeah, so the research has been done prior to this season, and the impact, the force of impact and the frequency of concussions is higher on that play. If you went simply from a player's safety perspective, that you'd have to say the play should be eliminated. And I'm for player safety. It's it's exciting, it's a wild play to watch. The game would still be an amazing game even without that one play. And so I'd be in favor because of player safety.
And in terms of that play, people say, it's 11 guys running at 11 guys, doesn't happen with that full head of steam anywhere else. Do you put less, we've talked about starters on special teams, is that a concern in terms of what personnel specifically goes on your kickoff and kick coverage?
It isn't, because that play is still valued, legal, and is happening, and it affects, well, special teams are one play for a large chunk of land, and we actually fight for every blade of grass. So if you're a team that values every blade of grass, and you know the implications of that play could be more blades of grass than not, you better have good players on there, and so we do.
Bronco, just following up on some of the stuff about road games. You talk about how program hasn't arrived yet, we're still improving, not there yet, all that stuff. How much of a significant step in that direction would it be when you start consistently winning games on the road like this?
Well, I think it's then you start talking about sustainability, where you're not arriving, but it's just wherever you play, the quality of play, the consistency of play. And by the way, this happens in the NFL. It happens at even the most dominant or established programs now, where if it's on the road, that's always noted. They're on the road, or they have to go to some place, and there's a name for places they have to go play and that are formidable. That is part of sustainability and consistency at the highest level within your conference and in college football. And so it starts with claiming your own space, and that's we're becoming much more consistent and much more dynamic and fairly formidable at home. And so as that starts to translate, that's just the next step of health for the program, not only for any given year, but again, we're talking sustainability, which is what I really want for this program, and it's what our players want. They have proven capable, not only in an entire game, but portions of a game. And so it's not so much the setting, it's just the matter of the consistency we need for an entire game within the model this year that's working for us in terms of complementary football and how we're having success.
Coach, when we asked you about the blue zone stuff last week, you said looking at how and who. You were under center, some more in the red zone this week, Jamari Peacock in there, some more this week. Do you think that those changes specifically helped, or was it things overall?
Wow, There's multiple things. We altered our preparation model, which has been in place for years, to give us more focus and time in that area, which then allowed some personnel changes because of the extra time that we thought might help, not only with what we're currently doing, but whom we were playing. And it yielded a higher degree of outcome, not a perfect outcome, but a higher degree of outcome than the week before. And so the early return is that, yes, the changes, what we did schematically, but also, I believe that organizations are designed for the results they get. And so I had to look at the organizational design. And are we putting enough emphasis, enough time within practice meetings and hours? And my conclusion was no, because we weren't very strong on either side, offense or defense. And that then usually points to the head coach and how he's designed things. So we altered our design. Whether that holds through the rest of the season in terms of outcome, we'll see. But through one game, I was encouraged.
Two of the first-year guys who have not played this season, you went to Europe to get. How is the transition to college football in America going for Kareem and Luke? And is Europe still an option for you in recruiting going forward?
So how it's going for both of our European players, it's fast, and it seems like just when they get to the train stop, because that's what you ride in Europe, the train's already gone, and then they they look at their book and they try to get to the next, and they're not quite there on time to catch it. Trying to, but just haven't quite caught up with it yet. Luke has been hurt for the majority of the season, and which will affect his growth and progress. Kareem is not. He's been playing on our victory teams and working hard. But just it's a faster, steeper, bigger gap than I think what they thought and what we thought. But yes, we'll still go back, and I like the possibilities. I really do. Much like, no, I shouldn't say that. Unique challenges, much like when I was the head coach at Brigham Young, with missionaries coming home based on where they served, kind of influenced how long it took before they became available to play. I'm learning now, maybe more realistically, if we choose a player from Europe, not that he won't be a good player for us, but maybe time frame, how they might need to be managed, just maybe like a missionary in terms of setting expectations that are realistic.
Bronco, when you move Devontae back out to corner and then you plug in Chris Moore, how nice is it that those are veteran guys, older guys, as opposed to your first couple of years, maybe you weren't able to plug in experienced guys in those spots?
I remember early going to Pitt and playing Devontae at corner because we didn't have anyone, and he had been playing quarterback and receiver, and we just moved him, and we put the next best athlete out there with very little training, and we didn't win the game, nor was it really fair to him to expect him to play at a really high level other than he was a good athlete and going to compete. Now that we are gaining some maturity in the program and some depth, to have experienced players, when one goes down and you can move two and get a similar result, that just is, it gives you a chance to keep competing for your division, which we have as good a chance as anyone through, 7 weeks, right? A little over halfway. And if you're a college football coach or a college football player on any team, you just want a chance as late as possible to be in contention for that, and we still are.
Coach, you guys a couple weeks ago moved Tommy Chris from defensive line to offensive line. What's he been like there so far, and is there a plan to keep him there for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, the plan is to keep Tommy there. He increased his stock, status, and place on our roster as soon as he made the move, and naturally, he's done a really nice job, probably farther ahead and performing better than any of us expected, and is a viable option based on his development and the players around him on how they're performing to play. So he's in our two deep. He's working hard, and I've been really encouraged by the move.
What are your impressions of Louisville and the up and down they've had the last couple of weeks? Was Clemson that overwhelming defensively, or did they just have an off day?
I think Clemson is that overwhelming defensively just by personnel. I had a nice talk with David Cutcliffe before the game, and we were talking about his game against Alabama early in the year. And there are some programs right now that have amazing talent or more of it. Those are two things. It could be players that are better while they're playing, and then it could be the volume of players that are better. Clemson has both. They have very good players, and they have great depth. I was actually impressed with Louisville's game, especially defensively, 17-3 going late through the third quarter, and they did a nice job taking the ball away and holding Clemson in relative check offensively. And then things kind of slipped away from them, as sometimes it does if there's a talent or execution differential as the game goes on, and it wasn't till late till that happened. And so the score didn't necessarily reflect how 3/4 of that game went. Louisville is certainly not struggling offensively. The Clemson game, or barring the Clemson game, if you looked at just points, their quarterback got hurt, yet the scheme and what Scott has already done there is, I think, really impressive, how hard they're playing, their culture. And so they're certainly capable of scoring on anyone at any time, at any quarter, at any minute, no matter where they play in the country. And so very dynamic offensively. And I would say certainly capable and active defensively. And right now they're probably more known for their offense explosion and firepower, and that side seems to be performing a little in their first year at a higher level, but that doesn't mean their defense isn't capable and won't catch up. And when that happens, whatever week it happens, then they become a powerful football team. They're already winning and doing a nice job. And again, against Clemson, I thought it was their defense that was the primary reason they were in the game for so long.
I was going to ask you about Louisville, but let me ask you about Bryce Perkins and his running, and what is the threshold there as to how much you want him to run during a particular game?
Yeah, I was asked after the game, or the point was made of now that Brennan is back, does that affect why we made the decision to run Bryce more? And that answer is yes. So we've made and taken a lot of effort not to include our quarterback in the run game while our primary backup has been hurt, knowing that that not only would affect maybe that game, but possibly the rest of the season. And so we've done our best to work around or have offense without Bryce as a running threat, maybe just as a scramble threat. In the game against Duke, that was the reintegration because Brennan is back of having our quarterback be involved more in the run game than what we have used in the past. I don't have a certain number of plays, but we do have yardage thresholds and point thresholds that we go after, and we know kind of at what yardage marks and what point marks that traditionally, as I've been a head coach with this staff, and what those take to win, and we intend to use every player we have to get to those marks. And if that means running the quarterback more, we'll do that. And that can change certainly week to week based on what the opponent does.
I want to ask specifically about Louisville with their wide receivers. Last week we talked about Duke not having, per se, a star, kind of moving the ball around. Louisville's got two guys that are that level of production. What challenge do they present?
Yeah, playmaking in space. So speed and ability, and there's big play potential. Louisville is dynamic. They're dynamic at quarterback, they're dynamic at running back, they're dynamic at receiver. And so much like Louisville seems to always be, at least since I've been in this league, they are exceptional athletes that there's a big play threat that's just kind of always hanging over your head of this play could go the whole way. And the amount of points they're scoring, again, reflects that they can and they have done that already.
And if I'm not wrong, Scott said he wanted to play both quarterbacks going forward. From a preparation standpoint, I know we've talked about this before, but how does that change or challenge a defense when you're getting ready?
I think there's not enough time to truly prepare for both. You have to look at what they've done well, what concepts really work, and then treat both quarterbacks like they are the starter. And if they were, they would have been starting. So with pass, we basically look if, when he was throwing it, which quarterback is more likely to have been the thrower, and then match those concepts. If he was running well, then which of the two quarterbacks runs, and then you try to make two guys one. Otherwise, there's not enough time, and your plan becomes too diluted. So I wouldn't see them altering anything significantly because they're having so much success offensively anyway. And so I would think both quarterbacks will play, and we'll do our best to say they're both a single quarterback. One might be a little better thrower, one might be a little bit better runner, and then try to tilt it slightly that way. But any extreme measures, it just doesn't allow you to be prepared enough to play or to execute at a high enough level.